The city never sleeps, but some souls do. Some souls long for sleep, for rest, for silence. Lorenta was one of them. She had been awake for hours, staring at the silver curtains of her hotel room. Outside, the world of wealth shimmered, cars moving like jewels, neon signs glowing like artificial stars. But inside her, there was no light. Lorenta was 32, a woman of quiet grace and wounded dignity. She was not born into wealth, she had walked her way into the glimmering cage of luxury. Behind her still eyes was a history of sacrifice, a sick mother she had nursed, a younger brother she had fed through college, jobs that broke her back and left her invisible to the world. And then, there was Robert. Robert was a billionaire, and not just by numbers. He was a man who carried power in his voice and loneliness in his eyes. He was the kind of man who had everything, but never enough. His life was filled with meetings, mergers, parties, and yet, his heart was always empty. The world called him ruthless, but those who had once touched his soul knew he was only tired. It was on a winter night when they met, one of those endless banquets where laughter is loud but hearts are silent. Robert noticed Lorenta not because she shined the brightest, but because she sat quietly in the corner, holding her wine glass as if it were the last piece of safety in a chaotic hall. He walked toward her. "You don't belong here," he said gently. Lorenta looked up. Her lips trembled into a faint smile. "Neither do you." That was how their story began. What followed was not the fairy tale the world imagines when they hear the words billionaire affair. There were no diamonds thrown into her hands, no helicopters sweeping her into castles. Instead, there were nights, quiet, trembling, unguarded nights, where they sat together and spoke. Robert told her about the emptiness of success, how every deal closed only widened the hollow inside. Lorenta told him about her family, her scars, her loneliness. And then, there were nights of touch, nights where bodies met, not in lust, but in desperation. Where kisses tasted of sorrow, and every embrace was a prayer against the darkness. Robert's arms were heavy, but when they circled around Lorenta, she felt as if the world finally paused. His breath against her neck was not hunger, but confession. Lorenta, in his bed, was not a mistress. She was a mirror, reflecting his humanity back to him. Yet the affair was never simple. Every moment they spent together was stolen, from society, from expectation, from the lie of their public lives. Robert had a fiancée chosen by family politics, a woman he did not love but could not reject. Lorenta had her dignity, a fragile treasure she feared losing. And still, night after night, they returned to each other. Because in each other, they had found something the world had denied them: embrace. Love in silence is heavy. It carries weight. The longer they held on to each other, the sharper reality became. Lorenta began to feel the stares, the whispers in hotel lobbies, the soft cruelty of strangers who sensed her secret. Robert began to feel the chains of his empire pulling him away from her, demanding his presence in boardrooms while his heart was still in her arms. One night, after a long silence, Lorenta whispered, "Robert, do you ever think this will destroy me?" His jaw tightened. He kissed her forehead before answering. "Every night, and yet you don't stop." He closed his eyes. "Because stopping would destroy me." It was then Lorenta realized, love is not always a gift. Sometimes, it is a wound both choose to keep open. But there were also tender things. The way he traced her fingers slowly, as though memorizing her veins. The way she pressed her cheek against his chest, listening to his heartbeat like a hymn. The way they both cried once, silently, in each other's arms, knowing no one in the world would understand. Their nights were not fireworks, they were rain. Soft, melancholic, but alive. The night of decision came without warning. Robert was to announce his marriage to his fiancée, a woman of perfect lineage, at a gala where the whole city would watch. Lorenta knew it was coming. She had always known, but knowing did not make it easier. That evening, she stood before her mirror, staring at the dress Robert had once gifted her. A dark velvet dress, one that whispered elegance and sorrow. She touched her reflection and whispered to herself, "You are not his wife. You are his knight." Robert arrived in her room before the gala, his eyes already weary, his suit already carrying the weight of performance. He took her hand. "Lorenta," he whispered, "say the word, and I will burn it all down. I will leave it, the company, the name, everything." Her heart shattered, because she knew he meant it, but she also knew love is not always possession. Sometimes love is sacrifice. She shook her head slowly, tears trembling down her cheeks. "No, Robert, if you destroy yourself for me, you will hate me one day. You will look at me and see ashes." He collapsed into her embrace. His tears soaked her shoulder. They held each other as if the world would end that night. And in many ways, It did. Because sacrifice is not always noble. Sometimes, it is just survival. They said goodbye without saying goodbye. Robert went to the gala, his arm linked with another woman's. Cameras flashed, journalists wrote, the world applauded. He smiled, but only with his lips. Lorenta sat by her hotel window, watching the city lights blur into her tears. She wrapped her arms around herself, pretending it was still him. But love, true love, does not vanish with distance. It lingers, in memories, in smells, in the ghost of a touch. Months later, when Robert visited his sick mother in a small hospital, he found Lorenta there. She was volunteering, as she often did, feeding old women who had no families. Their eyes met. For a long time, neither spoke. And then Robert walked toward her, slowly, carefully, as if every step carried a lifetime of longing. He did not kiss her. He did not hold her hand. He only embraced her, a long, trembling, silent embrace. The kind of embrace that carried all their nights, all their sacrifices, all their pain. The kind of embrace that told them, we lived, we loved, even if the world never knew. It was not an ending. It was not a beginning. It was simply an embrace. Years later, Robert would sit in his vast mansion, surrounded by wealth, surrounded by emptiness. He would remember Lorenta not as a mistress, not as an affair, but as the woman who showed him that even in the darkest nights, the human soul can still be held. And Lorenta, in her modest home, would smile sometimes when she felt the night wind brush her cheek. She would whisper to herself, some embraces never leave, for in the end, their story was not about riches, not about scandal. It was about love, sacrifice, pain, and the power of an embrace that turned even the darkest billionaire night into something human, something eternal.